Hi, this is Dr. Hefferly again. I decided that I'd give you a little bit more help with your book reviews. I've gotten quite a few questions from you and your classmates, and I thought I would try to give you some tips on writing book reviews today. So as you know, your book review is due on November 13th. If you look on our Moodle page here, you can see where your assignment is, and you're going to be uploading your book review right down here where I have my cursor. So I've written a lot of book reviews, and normally you write book reviews for journals. The purpose of a book review is to tell other people about that book. So you're writing this for an audience, a wide audience, to kind of evaluate that book on, is that book readable? Is it effective? Does it have a well-evidenced and supported argument? What new things does it add to our knowledge about a certain subject? You might want to, in a book review, recommend it for a certain audience. So perhaps the audience would be better for scholars, other scholars who have a lot of knowledge about this topic. Or maybe this is a book that is readable for a very general audience. So the point of a book review, again, is you're trying to tell the world about this book. What's in it, what's good about it, what's bad about it, and would you recommend they read it too? So that's the kind of point of it. Now, when I do a book review, I really thoroughly read a book, and I take lots and lots of notes on it. And then I go back after I've read it and taken lots of notes on it. I pay special attention as I'm reading to the footnotes it's using, what's in the footnotes, what kind of evidence it's using. Is this original primary source evidence? Do they have a good knowledge of all the other secondary literature that's out there on the topic? So you should pay attention to not just what they write, but also their footnotes. If they have a bibliography, you'd look at their bibliography as well. All right, so you read it really, really thoroughly, and then you go back and look at your notes, and then you write up your evaluation of that book. So it's kind of like a critique. You're summarizing what's in the book, what the main arguments are, the kinds of evidence they use, but you're also critiquing it all the way, thinking very critically about that book. So you want to put on your critical hat as you're doing a book review. You want to kind of see yourself as maybe not an expert in a field, but definitely somebody with an opinion about the book. And you're going to be telling the world what your opinion is and explaining why you have that opinion about that book. So you are going to be critical in writing a book review. All right, now for this class, I have some very specific guidelines for doing this book review. So in maybe some of your other classes that you've taken or you will take, you'll do book reviews. Sometimes a professor will assign a book, and then you have to read that book and do a book review of it. For my class, I'm allowing you to choose the book you're going to review, but there are some limitations on what book you choose. You are not allowed to choose a primary source as your book, like an autobiography. You're not allowed to choose a children's book as your book, or a juvenile literature, or a young adult literature book. You're not allowed to choose a novel as your book. It very clearly says in the instructions, read one scholarly monographic book very closely and thoroughly. Now, your Benjamin book talked about what a scholarly monograph is. And I want to just review a little bit for you, just because I've had some questions on this. A scholarly monograph is written by a scholar. So you need to look up the credentials of the author and make sure they're a scholar, that they have some credentials, maybe a PhD in that subject, that they've done quite a lot of research. Maybe their job is to do this research and publish and write a lot about that one topic. All right, so you want to make sure that they're a scholar. Secondly, to be a scholarly monograph, a monograph is focusing on one topic in depth, and it's based on the analysis of primary sources. And you can tell that they're analyzing primary sources because in the footnotes or the endnotes, it will give you detailed information about those primary sources, those eyewitnesses to the actual event. So you want to look for footnotes. If they don't have any footnotes at all or endnotes at all, it's probably not a monograph. Some of the really old monographs before footnotes came into fashion, like in the 1800s, if you're doing a book review on a book from way back then, they might not have footnotes or endnotes, but they definitely have a bibliography where they tell you all about their primary sources. So you need to have some proof that they are using primary sources, and in your review, you're going to tell me what kind of primary sources they're using for their evidence. So that's how you know is this a scholarly monograph? Is this a book you should do for this book review? So, within those guidelines, you want to make sure it's a scholarly monographic book. Now, how long should the book be? I know you're going to be tempted to want to make that book as short as possible. We're all lazy. I understand that. But we are also scholars, and you want to be as thorough as you can. Your goal is to learn as much as you can in this class, not to learn as little as you can. Learn as much as you can. Pick that big long book off the bookshelf. Pick a 600-page book. Pick an 800-page book. You can do it. I'm going to tell you how you can do it. I know we only have a few days left now before your book review is done. Now, many of you have already read your book, and you're all ready to go, and that's fine. I'm going to give you some tips on how to read a book really quickly. If time is short and your book is long, how do you read that book very quickly? Okay? So I'm going to give you some tips on reading now. Now, I gave you a handout on how to read a book, how to read a secondary monographic book. And that was linked at the top of Moodle. We went through that with how to analyze secondary sources. Now, you're not using the same book that you analyze for your monographic critical analysis worksheet. You're using a different book now. So to find your book, most of you probably went to the Ethel K. Smith Library. You did your research. Hopefully you went to the library's actual books so you could very quickly pick them off the shelf. So I've been doing my big research project on student protests. Ever since I was in graduate school, I've been researching student protests. So let's say I wanted to do more research on that and find out what else is out there on this. So these are I just typed in student protest, and you should be able to see on your screen some of the findings I have here. So the first one says Contested Democracy, Freedom, Race, and Power in American History, and it's an edited collection. That is not a monographic book. That's a series of essays. Don't use that for this book review. All right? You want to have a monographic book, a book all by one author about one topic. The next one says College Curriculum and Student Protest. That was done in 1969. It's probably not by a historian since it's about college curriculum instead of the history of student protest. So I'm going to skip that one as well. You want to be very selective. Now here's one, Put Your Bodies Upon the Wheel, Student Revolt in the 1960s. That's exactly what I study. Student Protest in the 1960s by Kenneth J. Heineman. I've read other things by Kenneth Heineman, and he is a historian. So I'm going to click on that. So let's say you find this book. What you want to do even before you go to the stacks and you get it off the shelf is you want to look at its table of contents and make sure that it's on the topic that you want it to be on, that it's going to have useful information on your research project. So looking down this table of contents, I see that it's very useful, very interesting. All right. Another thing you might want to note are the subjects so that you can use those same words to search in the future to maybe get more hits. And you also, before you move off of this page, you might want to click on the author's name, and it's going to tell you what other books that he's written. So this one says there's only 2 results found, and they're both here, Campus Wars and this one that I've been looking at. All right, so then I would go to the bookshelf and I would pick that off the shelf, and then I would read it. I'm going to tell you more about how to read that. So let's go to looking for a book online. So there are many books that have been scanned and they're now online, and there are a number of different websites where you can get these books. I'm just going to start off with Google Scholar. Google Books has got many books that have been scanned and you can read the whole book online. But let's type in student protest here. And this one says it's a book. I'm trying to decide if I want to click on that one. Now, many of these books are not going to be the whole book. Because of copyright laws, sometimes you can't get the whole book scanned online. But let me just go ahead and click on this one. This doesn't look like it's going to be the whole book. I'm going to go back up to the top here. And this is the top book. Jürgen Habermas is a historian. All right, so as you skim down, it says this is a preview, the total pages. So I wouldn't be able to read this book online. I'd have to order it. And if you haven't already found a book for your book review, it's too late to order a book. You could still order a book for your final annotated bibliography. All right, so you still have a couple of weeks before that's due. So you can use interlibrary loan to order books for the future. For the book review, though, you're going to want to get a whole book that's been copied on here. For my purposes right now, though, I'm going to skim through and I'm going to give you some tips on how to quickly read a book. All right, so first thing you want to look at is the table of contents. So for this book, I'd look over these and I would say, okay, well, maybe I am only interested in the student protest in the Federal Republic of Germany and not really interested in university history. I'm not really interested in technical progress and the rest of this. So for your book, the whole book doesn't have to relate to your topic. It might be just a couple of chapters that really relates to your topic. Either way, for your book review, what you should do to read a book quickly is look at the table of contents, look at the chapters that are going to be the most important for you to read. Then you start off reading the introduction. Read that whole introduction. Look for the thesis or the main argument that this author plans to make. The introduction might also tell you a little bit about the historiography, the other books that have been written on the topic. It might also tell you about the primary sources this author is going to use. So definitely thoroughly read the introduction. Next, you want to go through each chapter and read the first and last paragraph of each chapter. Take notes on that. What are the arguments of each chapter? Normally in the first few pages and the last few pages of each chapter, the author will lay out their thesis and support it with arguments again. For each chapter, you want to also look at the footnotes or endnotes and look at what kind of primary sources they're using and how they're using them. All right? Do that for the whole book. The introductions and conclusions for every chapter and the evidence they're using within the chapters. Next, you want to go through and you want to look at one or two chapters that are the most relevant to your research topic, that look like they're going to have the most information for you. Read those chapters really closely and thoroughly. Every sentence, every word. Read it, take close notes on those one or two chapters. Lastly, go to the conclusion of the book, the last chapter or the last few pages of the book. The author should lay out their whole argument again and restate it and support it with evidence again. That's how you quickly read a book. That's the short version. The short version of reading a book is going to take a few hours. If it's an 800-page book, a few hours is much better than a few weeks. Right? So if you're in a time crunch, that's how to quickly read a book, skim read a book. Yet still getting the information that you most need for your research project. Don't be intimidated by long books. Long books often have the most information, the most valuable information for your research project, the information you really need. So don't be afraid to take those books off the shelf or read through them if they're an ebook online. Okay, so this is an example of an ebook online. Books that have been scanned and posted online, you'll know that it's a book that's been scanned and posted online because it'll have page numbers, see? They all have page numbers. If you found something online that doesn't have page numbers, it's probably not a book, it's probably a website. And this book review is not a review of a website. You need a book. Whether that book's been scanned and put online or that book is in hard copy in the library, you need a book. 200-300 pages long at least, all about one topic, using primary sources to support an argument about that topic. That topic must be historical. This is a history class, right? So make sure this is a history book written by a historian, by a scholar. Okay? So I'm just going to go back and see if we can find any full ebooks that have been posted on here. So here's another book. And there are quicker ways to find a full ebook online. If you go through your library, there's a lot of ebooks that are online there as well. This document is in PDF. This is, I think, not a book. I think it's an article. I'm looking through it, and as I see Political Psychology 2002, this is probably an article. American Sociological Review, probably an article. So I'm looking for things that say actually books. Google Scholar is mainly articles, so I have to tell you that much. One website that I've used, there's a place called Gutenberg Books. Oh, I'm in Google Scholar still. Let me get out of that. Gutenberg.org. And those are books from all over the world that have been scanned in. So you see it says free ebooks. You don't have a library subscription for it. So I'm going to search the book catalog for student protest. No books found on that. I'm just going to try students then. And these are books on all kinds of topics. These are not just historical monographs. So you can see The Return of Sherlock Holmes. That's fiction. So you can see all kinds of books on here, anything that's been scanned in. Some of these might be also useful for your annotated bibliography. For your book review, though, you're looking for scholarly monographic books. So let's just say The History of Art for Beginners and Students. Gutenberg mainly has older books on it that are no longer under copyright protection. So let's say I want to read this book online. You can choose all kinds of formats, Kindle, lots of different formats from Gutenberg. And here we go. So it's got the table of contents. Some of the other things you would want to note for your book is you'd want to note when it was written. That'll help us understand what they would have known at that time, the context. You'd want to research the author of the book to make sure that they're a scholar. And you can see here's the table of contents. I'm just going to go down to the book. This is an HTML format, so that's a website format. Many of those HTMLs are not going to have the page numbers in them. So if you do a book on an ebook through HTML, you won't have the page numbers. So in that case, it is actually better when you want to quote something from a specific page. It's better to have the actual book with the page numbers in it. So some of these other formats are going to have the page numbers included. I think Kindle might have the page numbers included. Okay? So then there's a couple of other places. There's one that's, I think, Internet Books that also has free ebooks. Our library, of course, has free ebooks on it as well. So you can do an ebook. You can do a hard copy book. It has to be a book. It has to be about one subject using primary sources to support an argument about a history topic related to your research topic. I think I've covered everything about book reviews that you need to do a good job on this book review. Make sure you submit it on Moodle before 5 o'clock on Thursday for full credit. Do a really good job on it. It's good to follow those instructions really carefully that are up on Moodle for doing the book review. If you click on the book review due, it's got all of those requirements listed right there. You want to follow those very closely. It's going to be about 4 to 5 page double-spaced long. And it could be longer. If it's much shorter, though, you're probably missing some things. Okay? You're going to summarize the thesis, main arguments, and evidence, and evaluate the book in terms of its theory, readability, and argument. And that should take you 4 to 5 pages. All right, this is worth 10% of your semester grade. Good luck on it, and let me know if you have any questions at all about it. Just email me, and I'll be happy to help you out. See you next week.